Powdery mildew is a very common disease in the garden, but a lot of the information that you've learned about powdery mildew is actually wrong. In this program, we're going to have a close look at this disease and figure out whether you should be treating it, and if you should be treating it, how should you treat it? So what is powdery mildew? Well, it's a fungal infection. The fungi spores land on the plant leaves. They germinate very similar to seeds. They actually make a little root that comes out. It burrows into the leaf and it sucks juices from the leaf. It's using that leaf as a food source. That, of course, damages the leaf and makes the plant less productive. We notice powdery mildew because you see it as a white film on leaves. Generally starts as a few small specks, and then those specks get a little larger and larger. And as the fungi grows, it makes more spores, and they spread around, and you have more infection, and then you get more spores, and you get more infection, and so on. And before long, the whole leaf is white. As gardeners, we talk about powdery mildew as one disease, but that's not true. Almost every species of plant that gets powdery mildew is infected by a different type of fungi. And the one that's on your roses won't infect your lilac. They're different species. As gardeners, we have to start thinking of these as many different diseases that are similar. So don't be worried if one plant has powdery mildew. It's not going to spread to every other plant in the garden. It's quite specific to the plant that it grows on. So let's learn some more about powdery mildew. How do you prevent powdery mildew? There is a lot written about preventing the fungus. Let's have a look at some of the advice. First, keep plants well watered. This makes sense for most diseases. A healthy plant is less susceptible to infection. Secondly, avoid overhead watering. The idea here is that overhead watering gets the leaves wet, increasing the humidity around the leaves, and high humidity encourages the growth of the fungus. However, the conditions that favor powdery mildew are high humidity at night and low humidity during the day, which means that overhead watering in the morning would help prevent the fungus, not encourage its growth, which is the opposite of the recommendation. Besides, watering only increases humidity for a very short period of time since a bit of wind dries the leaves quickly. I don't think overhead watering makes any difference. Another suggestion is to prune to open up the interior of shrubs and trees. Opening up the space between branches will allow better air movement, which in turn reduces the humidity. Given the fact that low humidity during the day favors powdery mildew, pruning may not have much effect on the powdery mildew. Such pruning is, however, a good idea for preventing other diseases. Removing infected plant material is another recommendation. This will reduce the number of new fungus spores produced on the infected plant and should keep the fungus from spreading too much. There are a couple of problems with this logic. No matter how well you remove the infested parts, you will not get them all. The spores are there even if you clean up the infected vegetation. When you remove an infected leaf, you remove both the fungus and the healthy part of the leaf. Remember that the fungus rarely covers the whole leaf surface. This means that the plant has less green leaf surface to make food, making it even more difficult for the plant to survive the attack. It is probably a good idea to remove heavily infected leaves, but I do not remove leaves that are slightly infected. This is just my opinion and not validated or disproved by research that I know of. Another option is to plant resistant varieties. This is probably your best defense, but it does not always work. Summer phlox is notorious for powdery mildew infection, and the variety called David is reported to be resistant, but not in my garden. How do you get rid of powdery mildew? Once leaves are infected, you can't get rid of the infection. At best, you can stop further spread, but it is critical to act fast as soon as you see the infection. I almost never recommend DIY solutions, but in this case, there are a couple that do work. Baking soda does work, and it's commonly called the Cornell formula. If you search for this formula, you quickly realize that there is no one formula. There are many versions of the formula, but they are fairly similar and consist of the following key ingredients: 1 gallon of water, 1 tablespoon baking soda, 1 tablespoon vegetable oil, 2 drops dishwashing liquid. These ingredients are mixed and then sprayed on the plant that is under fungal attack. It is popular because it's simple, and most people have easy access to the ingredients. Baking soda is sodium bicarbonate, a simple salt that can be found in grocery stores. Some people substitute potassium bicarbonate, which is available on Amazon, because sodium is toxic to plants. Another good DIY option is milk. Use a 25% solution of 2% milk. Non-fat milk does not seem to work as well. Spray plants every few days. Neither of these solutions removes powdery mildew. They will only prevent it from spreading further. It is important to spray as soon as you see signs of the disease, and both sprays need to be reapplied regularly. I mentioned that powdery mildew is actually several different kinds of diseases. Well, it turns out that some of them are inhibited by moisture. Others are inhibited by dryness. So a lot of the advice that you're given about controlling powdery mildew with moisture and watering and so on doesn't really make sense, because at best it only applies to some species of fungi. You might keep your plant dry, but in fact what it needs is to be wetter. The plant over there, it's getting powdery mildew too, but that plant needs to be drier. So the rules don't really work unless you know the specific species of fungi that you have. And I know you don't know that. You don't know whether you should keep it wet or dry. In general, for most of the species, high humidity favors the creation of spore, making more spores. But low humidity favors the dispersal of the spore. That's the release of the spore so it can go and affect other plants. I think in most cases, gardeners who try to control powdery mildew with moisture levels are fighting a battle they'll never win. I've given up trying to control humidity a long time ago. I water when I want to water. I don't worry about the powdery mildew. The bottom line is, learn to live with the disease. It rarely kills plants. It is rarely so bad that you have to do anything about it. If a leaf is only partially covered with powdery mildew, leave it. It is still useful to the plant. If you want to control powdery mildew, replace the plant with a better plant. In many cases, we're growing old cultivars that we should get rid of anyways. There are better plants available. And then the problem goes away. If you'd like to hear about more myths that will save you money, click this video here. And if you're interested in houseplant myths, have a look at this video. Happy gardening.